And so for me, these differences mean that as a consultant, you must quickly understand diverse industries quickly and provide actionable insights. Whereas if you're in a corporate role, the emphasis is really on sustained change and internal advocacy.
Welcome to the Sustainability Leaders Show, your go-to podcast for actionable insights from top sustainability leaders worldwide. I'm Max, co-founder of TSC, and I am your host today. The purpose of this podcast is to share the stories from those actually leading sustainability efforts in organizations around the world. In each episode, we uncover unique insights, lessons learned, and practical advice to help you drive sustainability in your organization. And this podcast is brought to you by the Sustainability Circle, the invite-only community exclusively for sustainability leaders. Today, we have the pleasure to speak with Dr. Kaushik Sridhar, one of our founding members. Originally from India, Kaushik transitioned from being a professional tennis player to becoming a leader in the corporate and consulting world in Australia and beyond. He is now a portfolio entrepreneur, global speaker, business coach, university lecturer, and is the author of the best-selling book, The Art of Winging It. Kaushik has worked in multinational corporations across mining, real estate, healthcare, IT, and more, Big Four consulting, and is now running his own niche purpose-driven consultancy. This puts him in the perfect position to share his experiences of driving change in vastly different environments and the pros and cons of each. Kaushik, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Max. Thank you for having me. I think that introduction is one of the best that I've ever heard. So thank you for reading it so well.
Thanks for that. I guess let's actually kick things off with our rapid fire questions. Kaushik, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Do you consider yourself Indian, Nigerian, American, or Australian?
A blend. I would always say I'm Indian by blood, Nigerian by heart, American by outlook, and Australian by passport. There you go.
What's your favorite sustainability initiative you've worked on?
It would be developing an ESG diagnostic tool, Max, from many years ago. And that was when I first got into ESG and sustainability. So it really helped me determine end-to-end how to help fix company sustainability issues back in the day. So that's something I'm very proud of.
Who is a thought leader in sustainability that you admire?
I greatly admire a former CEO of Unilever, Paul Polman. I think we all know his achievements and accomplishments on driving sustainability in that organization. So he's one of many thought leaders that I greatly admire.
And what's the favorite place you've traveled to so far?
Oh, my favorite place, much to the annoyance of my wife, place I also want to retire is Easter Island, which is in the middle of nowhere. It's one of the prime examples of climate change. And there's pretty much nothing there except some statues. So when I hit 50 or 60, I'm going to go and live with my statues.
Wow, that's an interesting take. And then there's one very special question, the last question for you today. Between tennis and teaching, which one do you find more challenging?
I think I personally find teaching a little bit more challenging because it requires more continuous adaptation to meet the diverse and different needs of different students. And you've also got to effectively communicate complex concepts. So for me, teaching is a bit more challenging.
All right. For everybody who's listening in today, before his business career, Kaushik has actually been a professional tennis player. Kaushik, what led you to make the transition and then pursue a career in sustainability? Tell us a bit your journey and what brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, sure, Max. So the first question you asked me is about 4 different countries, right? So if I had to describe myself, it's really a global citizen, and it's something that I'm very grateful for because not many people have that opportunity, and I'm one of those fortunate ones who's had that journey. So my first career was obviously a professional tennis player. So in Nigeria, I started playing tennis at about the age of 6. I think I stepped in for one of my dad's friends who pulled a knee during one of the tennis doubles games, and I hit my first shot that I hit. One of my dad's friends said, "This guy's got some potential." And so within a couple of years, became number 1 in the country, went on a tennis scholarship to the US. And yeah, I played on the ATP tour, had a ranking in the world. And I thought tennis seemed to be going quite well. I even played college tennis in the US. I really thought nothing else besides just hitting a good shot, getting on the ATP tour, playing Wimbledon. becoming the next Roger Federer, retiring at 30, 32, and just chilling, as many amazing athletes do. Unfortunately, I wasn't that good in tennis, so my ranking wasn't that great, and I had to think about what's going to be plan B for me. So I came to Australia actually as a tennis coach. A very famous person who still holds the record for most Grand Slams. Her name is Margaret Court. Djokovic, I think, is second. She rang me at 4 a.m. when I was in the US and said, "Hey, I've seen you on the internet. I think you're kind of cool. You've got a certification in coaching. Do you want to come to Australia and build a tennis academy with me?" So I actually came to Australia to build a tennis school with her. Until today, many people, including podcast interviewers, have asked me what's been the highlight of my career. Until today, Max, that job has been the highlight of my career. And one of the reasons for that is imagine teaching tennis to a 3-year-old, 13-year-old, 23-year-old, 43-year-old, 73-year-old, and 83-year-old. Different egos, different communication styles, different needs, different requirements, different skill sets, and getting them all to align on a common vision or a common purpose, which is to hit the ball properly over the net. So that was a job
Mhm.
that taught me stakeholder engagement. That was a job that taught me how to communicate. Had nothing to do with sustainability, but very quickly I realized a year into that job that my passion for tennis was dead. And so I actually quit my job and I came to Sydney to do an MBA. And it was while doing my MBA that I got an internship opportunity in ESG or sustainability. I actually rejected that internship 3 times because I said, "What is this climate change? I don't believe in that. Human rights, everyone seems fine." So, in my very ignorant, tennis oriented lens, I didn't really know too much of the real world. And so I was eventually convinced to take that internship. And so once I took on that internship, I realized that I had a bit of a passion in me to try and drive a positive impact. And so it was during that internship and following that internship, getting into a job in sustainability and transitioning to the corporate world, that I actually very quickly realized the immense potential of sustainability to drive long term business success and social good. So that's what really led me to specialize in ESG and eventually establish my own consultancy, which is Orca Advisory.
Wow. Thank you very much for that explanation of your journey. It's a very interesting one. Are there very specific skills that you took with you from the tennis career to the sustainability world?
Absolutely. I think there's lots of similarities and overlap between being an athlete and driving sustainability programs and strategies in businesses. I think for me, discipline, resilience, and strategic thinking, these are skills that any professional athlete or any athlete for that matter, you've got to have that to really step up your game and get to the next level. So for me, these have been pretty transferable skills and have been pretty invaluable as well in my sustainability work over the past 18, 19 years. Because in sustainability, you got to have a long-term vision and the ability to overcome challenges is really essential. So the focus and determination that you need in sports, I believe also can be translated quite well into driving sustainability initiatives. So for me, discipline, resilience, and strategic thinking are 3 key skills for me.
Yeah, I think also for me, I spoke with over 200 sustainability leaders in the past 6 months. And I think
Yeah.
one thing that is very sure is resilience is definitely needed in order to actually get buy-in for your sustainability initiatives, to
Yeah.
convince the board that your sustainability vision for the company is right, and to also convince all of the stakeholders because
Mm,
sustainability is about change management and change management just takes time.
absolutely.
So we actually had quite a good view on your whole journey, right? From being a child until you actually became that leader. Let's maybe quickly look at the current day. What are you doing? I know that you're basically having your own niche consultancy, but I also know that you have various jobs as a lecturer as well as in private organizations teaching sustainability to people. Could you maybe give us a bit of a better picture here?
Yeah, for sure, Max. So I think everyone's life can be broken down into chapters, right? Because ultimately it's a story that we go through on our respective journeys. So for me, chapter 1 was tennis. Chapter 2 was kind of like corporate, but also academia, because I'd always been teaching at many universities. I'd been writing, blogging, speaking, doing lots of random stuff, as many people may choose to do. But I chose to do it in a very calculated way. And I've been very fortunate because 6 months ago, I thought, now that I'm 40, not that I'm going through a midlife crisis or anything, it's a midlife opportunity. I thought your tolerance level for many things, your passion, your desire, many things recalibrate over time. And so I asked myself, Kaushik, what's next for you? What's chapter three or what's chapter four in your next journey? And is this what can you do that's going to take you to your, say, mid 50s that you're going to try and keep sustainable? Pardon the pun. And so I spoke to three or four very close people to me. I mean, I've got 25,000 followers on LinkedIn, but I probably, really only trust about 20. So in my little circle, you've got your sustainability circle, I've got the Kaushik circle. I spoke to about a few people and I tested them and I was very comfortable where I was, corporate head of sustainability. You can pretty much have a very nice life, but I thought something's missing here. And so I guess a lot of the feedback made me commence my next chapter in February 2024, starting my own. And there's many consultancies out there, so hopefully I'm not part of that big ecosystem, but I just want to be a small drop. And my company is called Orca Advisory, which is actually a Swedish word. And the meaning of Orca means the will to get things done. But it also has another meaning, which my Swedish friend recently told me, which I cannot say in this podcast because it's a little bit expletive. But that's totally cool because that also symbolizes what my company is about, which is you just go for it, you have some fun. And it was really founded with the belief that every person like you, like Jonas, everyone, every organization like the Sustainability Circle has the potential to create positive change, right? There's lots of negativity around this world, and that's fine, but we need more positivity and purpose. So Orca and Kaushik is really, we are passionate about empowering businesses, individuals, communities to achieve their goals and make a lasting impact, a long lasting impact on this world. So the four pillars that I kind of underpinned the next chapter of my life are teaching, consulting, coaching, and speaking. And these are all aligned with everything that I've done for the past 20 years. A lot of people would always say when I was working full time, Kaushik, what are you doing this blog for? Why are you going speaking at this conference? Just focus on one thing. And I always said, no, no, no. It's very important to have a very diverse toolkit because you never know. One day you might need it for something amazing. I've always woken up with a smile on my face. But now what my wife says is I wake up with a smile and I jump out of bed because I get to create my day and there's no better feeling than that. And the best part is I put no pressure on myself. Life will be okay. Money's not everything. But I think if we can impact young people, which is where my teaching comes in. Currently, I work with 6 or 7 universities. I think I've taught about 2,000 kids in the last 6 months. Each one of those kids who are between the ages of 20 and 50, I think I've left my little mark on them, and that means a lot to me. Consulting, I've worked with about 7 to 10 organizations in Asia, Europe, America, and Australia. So having that global impact is something that I'm very, very pragmatically passionate about. From a coaching point of view, again, working with young people, middle-aged people, elderly people, boards, executive teams to unlock their potential, that's important for me. And speaking, last but not least, I love public speaking. The reason is not because I want to tell the world how amazing I am, but public speaking for me is a way to get my ideas out there. And if it's an audience of 1,000, like your podcast, if 1,000 people listen to it, but only one person gets it, that's enough for me. And that's all I really care about.
Thank you so much for that. I can definitely very much relate to the fact that you actually want to have impact on people's lives, because when Jonas and I set out to basically build the sustainability circle, we had the same in mind. We have been working for a startup here in Berlin hand in hand with sustainability leaders for the past 5 years. And we realized, okay, actually to have a lasting impact, we need to do more. And this led us to build the sustainability circle to get actually in the service of sustainability leaders. And this is what we are all about. We are here to maximize the impact of sustainability leaders and then to jointly drive sustainability in organizations. So there we
Awesome.
have a lot of common ground.
We
And
do.
I love the fact that you had so many different roles and you worked actually in so many different geographies and jurisdictions already. So you have a very broad view about, let's call it the state of sustainability all around the world. Would you be able to give a quick personal view on the state of sustainability?
Happy to. So some of the jurisdictions that I worked in, obviously Australia, which is where I'm based. I've done a bit of New Zealand, done Asia, done Africa, done the United States. But I think if we start with Australia, we've got a very strong regulatory framework here on sustainability, especially I believe around environmental protection. All you have to do is take a flight and come to Australia and look at it, what happens at immigration and customs. That'll give you a sense about how precious our biosecurity and biodiversity is for the country. Having said that, obviously, one of the biggest focus on the resources sector and mining in the world is in Australia. So that's almost competing against what I just said earlier. But generally, companies here have had a bit of a focus on compliance and reducing carbon emissions. So that environmental focus has really come out here. Obviously, balancing the economic growth and environmental conservation is a key challenge. My background, I think I've mentioned here, I've consulted with mining companies. I've worked in mining companies trying to reduce the environmental impact, maintaining profitability. So we always look to try and build very comprehensive ESG strategies that looks at community engagement, community investment, social license, renewable energy integration, etc. The state of sustainability in Australia is starting to get more momentum because the regulatory changes are about to accelerate from 1st of January 2025, especially from a disclosure perspective. Obviously, you're seeing that around the world. From an Asia point of view, sustainability, I probably get poked in the eye for saying this. It's kind of an emerging concept, but it's kind of not. It's got varying degrees of adoption. I've worked in Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, obviously India, and a couple of other countries in the Asia region. I think companies there generally they face the challenge of integrating sustainability into their business models while dealing with rapid economic growth and industrialization. For example, in India, I think I worked with a textile manufacturing SME to look at water conservation techniques and waste management practices. So we looked at installing water recycling systems, training staff on sustainable practices, and really looking to reduce water use and waste. So if you can demonstrate the economic ROI, I think in Asia in particular, it's more appreciated the link back to sustainability compared to, say, maybe Australia, which might have a bit more cash to splash on ESG. And probably the last jurisdiction briefly is Africa. There, it's almost a little bit opposite of Australia, where the sustainability and ESG efforts are generally more centered on social issues like community development, fair labor practices, and that sits alongside environmental concerns. The other element here, Max, is the type of companies that I've historically worked for. So large companies, we have the resources to invest, but we face the challenge of actually integrating those practices across complex global operations. Whereas if you look at small to medium sized enterprises, you've got fewer resources, but you could be more agile in adopting sustainable practices. So here the challenge is that initial cost of implementing sustainability measures. So the general kind of problems that I see in sustainability is lack of awareness and expertise on sustainability, which we can tackle through education and training. And obviously, with the sustainability circle, what you're doing here is pretty amazing to try and close the gap on that. You've got financial constraints. That's really hard. Sometimes it's not the easiest to give the economic ROI of any sustainability project. Some have a good ROI and some don't. A third one is regulatory compliance. I think navigating those complex regulatory landscapes is really important. The last one is supply chain management.
That has been a perfect roundup. I think that definitely gives a very good overview. And maybe now let's dive into the main topic of today, because you have been fortunate to work in consulting roles as well as in corporate roles. And in the end, you basically decided to open your own consultancy. So, as you have been working in your career and constantly switching between those two fields, working for consultancies like EY and KPMG, can you share your journey and experiences in these different environments with us?
Absolutely, Max. Would love to. And obviously, I've got a bit of a cough that I'm battling with. So, my sincere apologies. I think my career has been quite diverse and enriching, as you just called it out. Having worked at a couple of consultancies like EY and KPMG, I always suggest to young people looking to get started on a sustainability pathway to think about getting into consulting because you get to work on a variety of projects across a variety of industries, which is what I got exposed to. From writing sustainability reports for the oil and gas industry to building a sustainability strategy for a telecom company to doing a social return investment study for a not-for-profit food bank. And the list goes on and on. And just with the 15, 20 seconds of examples I've given you of life as a consultant, it sounds pretty amazing, but it's also quite intense and it's not for everyone. So I think for me, my journey and experiences in both the consulting and the corporate environment has been awesome. And the switching is what I've really enjoyed. I think if I had had a linear pathway, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you today. And that's why I always tell young people, I'm not telling them not to be loyal, but I always suggest, and not just young people, even people in their 50s, sometimes I think, oh my God, you've spent 30 years in a company. What's wrong with you? I always say, just there's a lot more to this world. There's 198 countries, right? And a lot of people stay in one country and a lot of people like to travel. And you talk to both types of people and you very quickly understand what type of people they are. I think similarly, if you find someone working in one company for 20, 30 years and one switching quickly, there's no one better than the other. But I think that diversity of thought, the diversity of experience, and in a space like ESG and sustainability, which is not one dimensional, which is not siloed, and which is not linear, I think for me, that constant switching between consultancies, but also between consulting and corporate.
Let's maybe now dive a bit more into the differences of consulting and corporate roles and see if we can actually figure out the pros and cons of each. Maybe
Sure.
we can provide our listeners with some considerations and guide them along their decision on whether or not to make a transition from consultancy to basically corporate and vice versa. So let's start with the question: what inspired you to move into consulting after your corporate roles? And how did you actually make that transition?
Sure. I think for me, Max, the desire to have a broader impact across different industries really is what inspired my move into consulting. For me, it was a pretty easy decision because I realized that rather than being a cog in one wheel, I thought maybe let's make many organizations and projects cogs in my wheel. I don't know if you heard of the expression number or a drop in the ocean. So I kind of wanted to rewrite that. And that's where the consulting world has really been kind to me. I think in a corporate role, for me, I was able to drive significant change within a single organization. But in consulting, I saw the opportunity to influence different businesses, each which has their own unique challenges and opportunities. And so that broader reach was very, very appealing and aligned with my passion for creating that widespread positive impact. Consulting, as you know, requires a very high degree of flexibility. And so that ability to quickly understand and address diverse business challenges is something that I appreciated. I had to learn. I also had to learn how to stay adaptable, to deal with the uncertainties and pressures of consulting. Because trust me, if you want to get into a high pressure situation, go into consulting. But also, I think being open to new experiences, learning from each engagement, each project, and continuously refining my approach. I would say these were the important ingredients, not for my success. I'm not going to say I was successful, but by my own definition of success, they were very, very essential. But
Mhm.
ultimately, Max, my decision to move into consulting was driven by my desire to have significant impact. And when I talk about significant impact, that's based on my current role. It's different when you work for much larger consultancies. The impact can vary. But I think in my current, what I do at the moment, multiple organizations, multiple industries, multiple jurisdictions, multiple challenges. And because you are the boss, I am the boss of my company, I've got some freedom, autonomy, flexibility, and also a bit of a canvas to paint what I think is a masterpiece. And in that sense, consulting is it aligns with my values, my aspirations, and the transition was so easy going from corporate to consulting. But I also have to say two words to conclude this answer, and that is immensely fulfilling.
Let's now paint a bit of a picture and see where the corporate role is very different from the consulting role. So, what are the key differences you've observed between those two roles? And maybe
Sure.
adding to this, because this is very interesting to me, how do these differences impact the effectiveness of sustainability initiatives?
In a corporate role, for me at least, and I think many people would hopefully align with this, is you focus on long-term implementation and internal alignment. You're taking a lot of people on the journey. Consulting is strategic advice, short-term project management, and you just hop like a rabbit or a bunny from client to client. Whereas in the corporate role, you're in it to win it, and you're in there for the long haul, and you've got to fight, and you've got to have a bulletproof vest that's thicker than thick. And so for me, these differences mean that as a consultant, you must quickly understand diverse industries quickly and provide actionable insights. Whereas if you're in a corporate role, the emphasis is really on sustained change and internal advocacy. Now, both types have pros and cons. Some people like to just endure and see where it goes, and some people like the hustle. So it really depends on what gets people going. I think, again, when I was in a corporate role, I would always call myself an intrapreneur. So when you're an entrepreneur, you're still a salesperson, but internally, because you're always fighting to get the next business case of ESG endorsed by the board and the executive team. You're always trying to get a budget, whatever it might be. So I think you're a consultant no matter what, but also from a consulting perspective, you're kind of a corporate no matter what. So I think they're not mutually exclusive, but there are certain intricacies, as you rightly pointed out, that are unique to each of those areas.
For someone considering a move from corporate to consulting, what should they take into account when making their decision?
Corporate to consulting, I would say consider your ability to manage uncertainty and the need for constant learning. I think moving to consulting can be advantageous. As I said earlier, if you seek variety, if you seek broader impact. I know someone who moved to consulting and they thrived by leveraging their corporate insights and also their corporate contacts. And pretty much the business just boomed. But I have another friend who did the same thing, but found the lack of stability challenging and just recently returned back to a corporate role.
Can you share a personal experience when you have been actually employed as a consultant? What was completely different than being in a corporate?
It's the lack of having a team, and you're not part of the inner circle. You are, but you're not. When you're in a corporate, you're part of a family. When you're a consultant, you are a consultant and you get treated a little bit differently by the client. So I think for me as a consultant, when I was engaged as a consultant, when I worked at the big four consultancies, I think it was a different feeling. And it was more about billable hours, working on client work, how much revenue do you bring in? Like the KPIs were quite different. Whereas when you're in a corporate, the KPIs are very different. For one thing, in a consulting world, you do timesheets. In a corporate world, you don't. That was the first thing that I loved when I left the consulting world. But that's a fun example to your audience. But truth be told, I think for me personally, consulting is a great place to start, but maybe not a great place to finish. Maybe. It really depends.
All right. And now let's do it the other way around. I
Yeah,
am a
sure, man.
consultant, and right now I want to go into a corporate role. What will drastically change?
You just flip it. You got to be patient and you got to focus on long-term projects. The transition, it can be beneficial if you desire a deep involvement in an organization's journey and not just sustainability, literally the organization's business strategy and journey over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. Got to be ready for that. I know two examples again, someone who went to a corporate role thriving, brought new perspectives, impactful change, has been there for like 15 years, pharmaceutical company. Another one went in, I think they went from a big four to a corporate, and the pace was so slow. They got so frustrated and missed a variety of consulting work. And so kind of went back. I think, yeah, you've just got to be patient. Although in today's world, a lot of the executives and the boards of corporates are very impatient because there's so many competing priorities. So if you're going to do something like ESG and sustainability, they want to see results in like yesterday. So having said that, corporates can give you that challenge as well of working in a very dynamic, fast-paced environment. It just depends on the organization and it depends on the country as well. Australia is one of the slowest. America would be one of the fastest. Asia is pretty fast, but still a little bit confused. And Europe is right in the sweet spot.
Yeah. What has been the harder transition for you?
I think from being a single guy to getting married, that's probably the hardest transition for me. I think professionally, Max, and this is maybe I'm different to the rest of the crowd, and that's the way I like it, but nothing's been difficult. It's just it's the lens you look at it from. I've worked in toxic cultures. I've worked in amazing cultures. I work for amazing companies. I work for not so amazing companies. I've worked with companies that have had impactful projects that I could work on, and also obviously the other side of it. But every instance I've woken up with a smile and a pep in my step. And I think it's about you want to look inwardly. So here's probably something I've actually shared this in other forums, but when I did my PhD 2009, so that's what 15 years ago, feels so old. My supervisor told me, I went to him. I actually wrote a thesis topic on sustainability that I wanted to change the world around. He was a tough guy, and he said, come see me in my office the next day via email. So I went to his office next day, And he said, sit down. And I sat down and he gave me a white sheet of paper and a pencil. And he drew a circle in that sheet of paper. And he said, the white space in the circle represents the depth and breadth of knowledge that exists in the universe. And then he took the pencil and put a dot in it. And he said, that dot is the impact your PhD will have. And that dot is probably the impact you will have in your entire life. So stop trying to be the circle. Stop trying to be the whole white space in the circle. Stop trying to change the world and just be grateful and satisfied with that little dot. He gave me that advice 15 years ago. I almost fell off my chair. I wanted to cry. I was sweating. I was upset. I was like, this is not what I wanted to hear. I'm young, vibrant, ready to roll, ready to rumble. And then today I realized it's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever received. I actually did a TEDx talk on that. It's called Follow Your Dot. That's the kind of imprint that feedback had on me. Because if you want to change the world, you're not going to. But if each person can think about their little dot, you add it up and that turns into something amazing. So for me, when I join any role, consulting or corporate, the first thing I do is I think about three dots. Once I hit those three
That
dots, whether it's in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or even a week, my mind is already to the next job. And that's how I roll.
That's a great life philosophy. Thanks for that. I will
No
definitely
worries, man.
take a bit of it with me. So maybe, I mean, no matter if one works in a corporate or consulting role, it is always important to actually stand out and showcase the
Yeah,
own expertise in order to build a career, right? And I think this can be incredibly helpful when climbing the corporate ladder or when actually searching for the next role or selling yourself as a consultant to a corporate. So you are actually one person who does that very well on LinkedIn. You said it
cool.
yourself. You have already 25,000 LinkedIn followers, I think, and you are actually demonstrating your knowledge and expertise to the world in a very smart fashion. So, is there any kind of advice you would give to people looking to establish themselves as a thought leader in sustainability?
Yes, share your insights. I recently finished a course with the university and I had 300 students and I told all of them, start a blog. Imagine you get 300 blogs that come up. 10 of them have actually started a blog and I'm so proud of them. They're like brilliant. So I say share your insights. We've all got thoughts, got insights. There's platforms out there like LinkedIn, Reddit, whatever. And I always tell these young people, they're always, one of the things is, I'm scared to put myself out there or a fear of being judged. And I always say, it's probably not polite to say this on your podcast, but don't give a S about what other people think. You do it for you. You do you. And if 1,000 people dislike your post, 5 people will love it. And those 5 people are the people you want in your circle of trust. And that's networking. So articles, post updates, relevant content. I think that's really important. Sharing your insights. It's a great way to establish yourself, engaging with your community, whether it's your sustainability community, engaging with the sustainability circle through Max and Jonas. Leverage these platforms, connect with like minded people, and you can really build a great career that way. Speak at events. I think building your personal brand. This is something that I did for 20 years. And a lot of people said, and have not told me, but I know they're thinking it, is this guy is just marketing himself or shamelessly doing this or that. And it never affected me. I just love it. It's the best thing in the world as long as you know why you're doing it and you're staying true to it. I've never lost a second of sleep over that, and I'm certainly proud of humbly what my personal brand is, and it got Orca to where it is today. I've had to do zero sales. It's all personal branding. So I think if people can come out of their comfort zone a little bit, it's not for everyone. But if you can come out of your comfort zone, define what your brand means to you or what you'd like to achieve. Could be something as having a professional photo on LinkedIn. Could be something as highlighting your key achievements and skills. Like you've achieved it. Why would you not want to showcase it somewhere publicly? I never understand that. And probably the other one is being authentic and being passionate. Authentic is important and integrity. This is something that I have not found a lot of in my times in the professional world. There are a few, and to those few, I will give my life for them. And I think the more people that we can see who are authentic, everyone is passionate, but authentic and have genuine integrity. I think when someone sees that in you, that's it. Half your battle is won.
There has been so much wisdom in what you have said right now. And I can only say that I 100% agree to that. And also, maybe to point out one simple fact, it's basically
Yeah, yes.
everybody has unique insights. And you never know who actually needs that insight at the very moment. So there is always some people, even when you start out, that are 3 steps behind you, and they can really profit from that fact. And you never know who actually you are going to touch with your content or your thought leadership in any kind of format. So yeah, I think the biggest step is to just get started, search the format that you actually find the most favorable for yourself, and then see where it goes.
Think about you write an article and you publish it. If you go to a conference has 1,000 people attending. You'd be lucky to build 10 strong connections. You write one article on LinkedIn, you're guaranteed to get at least 1,000 hits. Doesn't matter who, but you read that number and take a lot of pride from that because that's what I call impact. Impact is things that you don't see that actually comes back at some point. So positive and negative. I always encourage people, and for people who are more senior or more experienced, I always say, think about the education sector because people are going to get an education, right? And education is important. And I think that's one of the reasons it was one of Orca's 4 pillars is that if we want to see a massive dent in ESG and sustainability, you've got to work on the next generation. And my goal is to make the next generation, at least the ones that I work with, amazing people. So emotionally intelligent, authentic, have some level of integrity combined with knowing your stuff. The next generation should be amazing leaders who know their stuff. And I think that's something I haven't seen in my lifetime. So I'm really hopeful that in the next generation, the corporate world and all the worlds will be flooded with amazing leaders.
That has been a very fantastic last word roundup to our conversation.
Sure.
So, Kaushik, thank you very much for joining in today.
Thank
It
you.
was a pleasure having you on the show. And it is an absolute pleasure to have you as a founding member in the Sustainability Circle. Yeah,
Maybe I
go
was just
ahead.
going to add, Max, just to kind of close off. You were kind enough, yourself and Jonas, many months ago, and you're based in Germany. I'm in Australia. It's an amazing connection from different parts of the world, from people who haven't even met. And you just reached out and said, you've got this idea, TSC, and I'm sitting here. I've just quit my job. I've got all these things in my head. And I said, yep, let's have a chat. And you demoed, you shared the TSC. And I have to say, and I would say this even besides this podcast, that yourself and Jonas, 2 young people, but very driven and very passionate, very smart people. I think I saw something in you and I saw something in TSC. And to see where it was to where it is today is kudos. And the world needs more people like the two of you. So I just want to say like a special shout out and a special call out to the work that you two have done. No matter where the TSC goes, that's irrelevant. But just the way that you've taken a little idea and shot it and got so many people into it, not many people can do that. So good on you.
Thank you so much for those warm words. I can promise we are just getting started. And when we are done, then TSC is one of the biggest communities on earth, the new home for sustainability leaders to actually come together, help each other succeed, and turn one organization after the other sustainable. Thank you so much for joining me
Thank you.
today. And to anyone who's actually listening in, stay tuned for the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. See you next time on the Sustainability Leaders Show. Cheers.